From wherever you are around the world, welcome and thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be exploring the psychology of stalking and what to do about it. With us today is Mike Proctor. He wrote the wonderful book called Antidote for a Stalker. Mike Proctor worked for 33 years for the Westminster Police Department located in Orange County, California. During his tenure at Westminster PD, he worked uniform patrol as an SOR, School Resource Officer, SRO, and Chief's Administrative Aide. He worked Metro and for the majority of his years on the department was a robbery, homicide, and predator crimes detective. Also, it included, he also won the award for the Defender of Justice Award given to him by members of the California State Legislature for his continued work on stalking. He began investigating stalkers in 1991. Let's welcome to the circle Mr. Proctor. Welcome, sir.
How you doing?
Good. I barely gave you just due on your bio, so I highly recommend it. You can look him up on Amazon.com. You just saw the book a minute ago, Antidote for a Stalker. So thank you very much for being here. Now, this topic, and I forgot to mention this off the show, but this topic came to my head when I saw the new show that came out on TV, Stalker.
Uh-huh.
And we'll get your opinion on that a little later. But what is stalking? Is there a definition for it?
Yeah, many of the stalking actual penal code sections throughout the United States and actually the world too started with California. They had the first law in 1990. And let me read it to you. It's pretty simple. It says, any person who willfully, maliciously, and repeatedly follows or willfully and maliciously harasses another person and who makes a credible threat with the intent to place that person in reasonable fear for his or her safety or the safety of his or her immediate family is guilty of the crime of stalking. Now, that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Easily laid out. And in stalking, you don't have to have a direct threat. Like a direct threat is, I'm going to kill you. Everybody understands
you don't
that.
Need that.
Yeah, you don't need that. What you need is a credible threat, which is, and stalking is what they call a course of conduct crime. So that means a course of conduct over a period of time that causes the female, and we're going to say female most of the time because it's about 75-25. More females are stalked annually throughout the world than males. It's something that causes them to be stressed, emotional distress, or cause fear, and that's a credible threat. And there are stalkers out there that never threaten the victim like you would consider to be a threat. In other words, they bring flowers, they continually show up at the person's place of work, or they show up where their friends are, or they contact family trying to gather information, because in stalking, information is a huge thing for the stalker. They try and gather as much information as possible on the victim. And we have all different types of stalkers, and we have all different kinds of ways of working them.
So would a stalker, they would enjoy a victim that's on Facebook quite often?
Well, cyber stalking is a huge problem. There's so much information out on in the internet world that these guys gather on their victims. It's incredible the amount of information that's put out there. People go on Facebook and they think they're talking to their friends, and oftentimes they're actually talking to people that aren't their friends, because their friends get, I've got 2,400 friends. Really? Do you know everybody on your Facebook page? Do you know all those people that are your friends? Well, not really. But, Mary said this is her friend, and so I took her on my Facebook page, or I'm not really sure who that guy is, but he's on my Facebook page. So they gather everything that person puts out on Facebook on their wall. I personally don't have a Facebook page, so it's just the way it is. I'm not that savvy with computers, so in some way it's kind of good. But the new millennials are really savvy, and they put out tons of information.
So actually we'll get to that later. We're going to get more advice about what would you tell a woman, maybe a single woman, 23, 24, going to college or even older, and maybe what tips on Facebook we can get to.
Well, as we discussed prior to this, campus stalking is a huge problem that we're running into. And the reasons for that are fairly obvious. That number one, the stalker, if he's on campus, has access on a regular basis to the victim through classes, through environments, through the colleges and that type of thing. Then they research all the campus information centers and that type of thing to grab information on the particular victim. We have been doing research in regards to that. We helped USC, the College Consortium Project with the Department of Justice grant, to try and help the campus victims and how they can better report stalking and that type of thing.
Interesting. Bring it back a little bit. You said 75% of the stalking victims are typically female. Just out of curiosity, do females stalk other females at all?
Yeah, we do have that. We have females that stalk other females for a variety of reasons. Some of it's a vengeance type stalking to get back at that female. We're having a greater problem now, which is interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, with juvenile stalking. If you've been reading the newspapers lately, you had a situation down in Florida where a young girl committed suicide because she was being bullied by two or three other girls, and they filed stalking charges against them because, in fact, stalking and bullying oftentimes go hand in hand. And that's something people have to be aware of. And what they're finding, a recent 209 study on juvenile stalking showed that more and more females were doing the stalking than males.
Really?
Yes. And they were doing it not for sexual reasons. They were doing it to get back at the victim. So, yes, we have stalking that incorporates into bullying, and we have more and more juvenile stalkers coming into the field.
The scorn of a woman, huh?
Yes.
What's the definition of juvenile? What's the age range on that?
Well, juvenile, I would say probably, well, you can get juveniles doing this environment probably from middle school up, I would say. When we're talking about
18.
stalkers, we're talking about middle school up through the high school levels and the secondary school levels. But back to your question, do women stalk other women? Yes. Then also we have that situation in gay and lesbian involvement. We have had several of those.
Well, we only have a few stalking cases a year, right? Or
Oh, no.
how many do we have?
We have, there's probably on average about 6 million stalking.
6 million?
6 million people in the United States are stalked annually. In the UK, it's probably closer to about 1.8, maybe a little bit higher. And the EU, which we're involved with a lot because we're a member of the National Stalking Training Academy out of the United Kingdom, we get involved with them all the time, and their stalking numbers are going up commensurately. Yeah, they're going up because they're becoming more and more aware of what stalking is. Just like when we had the sexual assault revolution, more and more people figured out what that was, and they were reporting more. And this is, the more education they get, and education's key, the better your well, I wouldn't say it's better, but your stalking numbers do go up.
Interesting.
Considerably.
Gotcha. So it isn't necessarily that they're increasing the amount of stalkers, it's just people more aware of it then.
No, I would say both.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Any ideas why the stalking?
Well,
would go up,
it's
or?
because you have, number one, you brought up the internet. That's a huge deal that they can gather a lot more information on people. We have a lot more internet stalking than we ever had. That's why the FBI and local law enforcement joined together with RCFLs, which are regional forensic computer laboratories. And there's about 15 of those throughout the United States, because most law enforcement agencies aren't equipped to handle all the forensic research they have to do on identity theft, stalking, homicide, cell phone jamming, all this kind of stuff that's transpiring now.
Cell
It's
phone
incredible.
jamming.
Well, yeah, they go into your cell phone, they can shut it down, they can do all kinds of stuff.
Really?
Yeah. And stalkers also, they can send a Trojan.
Well, this is from the
yourself.
stalker. This is from the police department.
No,
doing
this
it.
isn't from the police department.
This is from the
No,
stalker doing that.
But the RCFLs and
wow.
stuff, what they do is if you have any digital device or any digital information you need to have researched or for law enforcement personnel bring into them, then they take that information and then they can take it to court afterwards. Because most law enforcement agencies, like I said, either too small, they don't have the money, budgetary problems are huge right now, to generate those type of facilities. So you have to have some place to go, and the RCFLs do a great job in assisting, but they have so many law enforcement agencies bringing stuff to them. It's
Wow.
ridiculous.
And what's the RCFL composed of?
It's composed of it's developed by the FBI, and they have agents working with local law enforcement computer
it's just there.
specialists.
Okay, so it's FBI.
So what they do is they bring those people in. For example, in Orange County, we have one in the city of Orange. And so law enforcement brings all of their information to them. And it's just not Orange County, it's Fontana, it's other places that they go to, San Bernardino County, because they have investigators that they've sent to that particular branch, RCFL. So
Let me ask you this question. You mentioned this earlier. They charged them with stalking instead of bullying, I think you said, or maybe both.
well, they charge them with stalking because they they didn't have a section per se of bullying. So my understanding of how it went in Florida, in that particular jurisdiction in Florida, so they charged them because they wanted them to stop their behavior, and the girl did commit suicide because of it.
Is one weighted more than another here? You know.
Well, the problem with stalking is that in certain states, I think I think it's about 12 now. I think other states have come around. And we try and help states to redo their stalking laws if we can. Or it's a misdemeanor charge the first time through.
Oh, misdemeanor.
Yeah, but in California, it's what they consider to be a wobbler. So it can be a felony or a misdemeanor depending on how it's charged. So that's helpful for the law enforcement officer out in the field or the detective if it's a wobbler, because he can always charge up the stalker with a felony. And threat assessment comes into this all the time as well. We have to threat assess stalkers continually.
Well, we'll start getting into the weeds. So what does a threat assessment consist of?
Well, a threat assessment with us, what we do is remember I told you that I came from a team. I came from the Family Protection Unit, and we feel that teams are the best way to handle stalkers. LAPD has a threat management unit, and they do an outstanding job. San Diego has a stalking task force. Anaheim just developed a stalking or a family protection unit as well, pretty much. So the victim, when they come there, it's a one-stop shop for them. They come in and the investigators are trained in how to help them. We have social service workers. We have people that will walk them through the process, victim advocates and that type of thing. So it's really necessary with stalking victims because they're pretty traumatized by the time you get them in the first place. And we're there to help the victim. So that's what we want to do. So the thing is that when we do our first evaluation of the victim, part of that is a threat assessment evaluation to find out whether or not what the lethality issues are with that particular stalker. Wow. So do we have to go forward right away and hook him up? That's cop talk for arrest. Or do we have some time to work the case slowly? Because remember, I told you that our average stalking case was between 250 to 700 pages.
That's outrageous, unbelievable.
And we put them in books, and they have table of contents. They have a stalking chronology that's laid out.
Does that include picture pages?
Some picture pages, but it also includes not only that, but we also do extensive search warrants on the stalker's cell phone, on their properties. And so because you can't believe what we do find. And when I lecture, we have photos of all that type of thing. Right? And like I said, I'm doing a lecture for the California District Attorneys Association right now, a series with them. And so we bring that stuff up in the PowerPoint. It helps them to better judge what a stalking is and how to better work it. So, which we can't do on this program. So,
no, unfortunately, we can't.
Yeah.
We're going to start delving into a little bit of the different types of stalkers, but before we get to that, you said something about celebrity stalking not as prevalent as people think.
Yeah, the problem with celebrity stalking, and it's not really a problem, but many people think that's where stalking is. That's where the mass amounts of stalking transpires throughout the world, and that's not true. Only about 9% of all stalking, 9 to 10% of all stalking is celebrity-oriented. That doesn't mean just like your movie stars, but your people on television that are doing the news and politicians. They're classified under celebrity type stalking, and so but they get the most television and coverage, and that's fine because my outlook is the more you talk about stalking, the better off you're going to be for the rest of the people. But in truth, about 80 to 85% of all stalking is intimate partner or domestic violence stalking. So,
okay.
So that's what we in law enforcement deal with the most. Now, your agencies like the Threat Management Unit, they will, because of where they're located, they're going to handle a lot of the Hollywood-based celebrity-type stalking, where most agencies aren't going to, but they still are going to have stalking because I get consults from like Middle America where a radio DJ is being stalked because they're celebrity in that location, and so it doesn't make any difference. Celebrity's a celebrity.
Any profession that gets picked out besides celebrities? Anything specific? Like doctors you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, we're having a more and more of an issue with not just mental health, but just healthcare professionals in general being stalked by their clients. And one of the reasons for that is people, well, why that? Well, because when you are a healthcare professional, what do? And you're a psychologist, what do? You try and help the person, and you try and make them feel at ease, and you try to assist them. So that many types of stalkers, you have to figure out what type of stalker you're dealing with, because you have to know the stalker type that you're dealing with. Those people gravitate towards people that assist them, and they feel that those people care about them greatly, and they feel that they have
almost like codependent.
Exactly. And so I get a lot of mental health professionals contacting me, especially single office mental health professionals. In fact, we wrote a special section in here for them on security, so that they can better protect themselves when they think they have clients that are unusual. I get them from all different types of family psychology to transgender or that type of situation. And I've been working with 2 of those lately, and they're rather unusual scenarios, but each one you have to look at and see, well, this person's doing it for this reason. For example, we had a stalking situation where the victim was a mental health provider, and the suspect had nursing background, and she was not bipolar, but she had a borderline personality disorder. Now I'm not an expert, so I can't say that, but that's what I was told she was diagnosed with. So she did not want to be abandoned by any stretch. The mental health provider tried to leave her, tried to push her off to somebody else because it was getting so intense she couldn't handle her anymore. She wanted to do things like bring a gun into the therapy to show her what type of gun she had. She would dress in the same clothes as the therapist would, things like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we've had situations where a victim's being stalked and by a male neighbor, and there's a whole litany of these things, but by a male neighbor who would follow her around, and wherever store she would go into, he would call that store and ask to talk to her. And then she went into a men's store at one time and was looking at specific suits and shoes and things of that nature. She didn't make any purchases, but that same subject came up to her front door the next day and was wearing the exact suit, shoes, and everything else that she'd been looking at. Yes. So these are the types of things that we deal with. I love working stalkers because they're so unusual. Because they're just a different breed of people. So again, you can have your straightforward, I'm in love with you and nobody else can have you stalker, but you have so many other different types, and you have to know their mental disorders if they have them. Not all stalkers have mental disorders. Some do. In fact, many do, like narcissistic personality disorders, bipolar. You have to know all this stuff, and as a cop, you're not trained in all that stuff, but you have to at least get the DSM-5 and sit there and look through the stuff and see what you think it is, and then that's why you work with mental health professionals who come to you and they say, okay, Proctor, this person is suffering from bipolar, and you need to read up on bipolar and see what that's all about. So when you interview them, it helps you in the interview. You also know where they're going threat assessment-wise, because that really helps you. You don't have to have a degree in psychology, but you have to be up to speed on that. So that's how we train a lot of law enforcement. And unfortunately, not enough law enforcement in the world is trained in stalking. They really aren't.
Let me ask you this. The process of investigating, so somebody comes in and says, I have somebody stalking me. I'll be naive here because I'm not really sure how it would work, but if you found the person, so let's say they say it's Jack who's stalking me.
Okay.
Now you know it's Jack. So you can get information on Jack pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
But do you always know who it is, or do you actually have to start figuring out who it is?
I have the 3 basic types of stalkers. I have intimate partner or domestic violence. Then I have what we call acquaintance type stalkers. These are individuals that don't have a relationship with the individual except for they may have gone out to coffee with them, or they run across them in a store environment or something like that, but there's no dating or sexual relationship involved. Now, intimate partner, you don't have to have a sexual relationship by definition, but they usually cohabitate or they have some kind of a dating relationship. All right, and then I also classify them as stranger stalkers. Now, in the book, we go through a whole bunch of different types of other subphylum, as I call them, or subsets of stalkers, like revenge stalkers, neighborhood stalkers, campus stalkers, on and on and on. But those are the three basic classes that most law enforcement is going to run into. And if you have a stranger stalker, you don't know who that person is, who do you think you have to work? What do you got left?
Yeah.
You have the victim. So you work the victim backwards to find out where the stranger stalker is.
Which one's the hardest for you guys? Is it the stranger as a stalker, or is it the one that's an intimate partner? I mean,
it's the stranger stalkers. When we get, if you have the resources like a metro team like we did and things like that, you can set up and do surveillances, and you can usually find out who the stalker is within a shorter period, a fairly good period of time. However, the intimate partner, if there's children involved and things like that, that's the worst kind that we can get, because they use children as a conduit to gather information on the victim, which we call targets. So they tell the kid, I want you to leave the back door open tomorrow and so I can come in the house. Don't tell your mother anything. You know, they're estranged, they're no longer together. Or they violate the restraining orders, or they browbeat the children so bad it actually becomes a problem, damage to the child. And then we have a major problem with, oftentimes the victim, I'll say a woman in this case, will go back to the stalker because she's concerned about her kids, or there's so much pressure brought to bear upon her for other reasons, and we can't have them doing that, because then that stops the prosecution from prosecuting the stalker because she's gone back to him. We may be able to prosecute him for other crimes like 422, which is criminal threats, or some other crime, but we can't prosecute them for stalking. So we're very strict on that. So if they need to be moved out of a location, they're put into, like we used to use WTLC, Women's Transitional Living Center, who does an outstanding job working with us. And other agencies that have these teams utilize those places. So they can place a woman in a secure environment and her kids, and then we can continue on working the case. But that's one of our biggest problems, is always the victim going back to the stalker. It creates the victim causes a real issue for us. And a lot of times it's almost like the battered women scenario, where the woman feels that she's responsible for part of this, and she's trying to help correct the problem, and unfortunately it doesn't help us any at all. So those are the harder cases for us.
And stalkers, can they come from any profession? I mean, have you seen like a medical doctor stalking a patient?
Oh, absolutely. I
Really?
mean, doctors, we've had attorneys. I just recently finished with a consult in a Midwestern state where an attorney stalked his wife, causing her $200,000 or better in attorney's fees for her. He would bring frivolous lawsuits against her on a regular basis, continual harassment. They finally just barred him. But you can have attorneys, you can have people of wealth. Most cops. Unfortunately we've had cops that stalk as well. So it doesn't make any most stalkers that we find is, in general, if you want to put a general term to them, is that most stalkers are intelligent, either book smart or street smart. They're not stupid people for the most part that we've run across. They will spend inordinate amount of time doing their profession, which is stalking. So oftentimes many of them will work at jobs that are not to their task or skill level. But that doesn't mean you don't have professional people, like we just said, stalking. But like I said, they spend a tremendous amount of time doing the stalking, gathering information.
Telling you guys, great book. You're going to have to get it. Antidote for a Stalker.
Hello, my name's Matt, and I'm an addict.
My mom was addicted to prescription pills when I was very young, before I even turned 1.
Are you or someone you know struggling with alcohol or drug addiction? Has everyone given up on you or your loved one? The caring staff at Elite Care understands and treats you as a whole person. We offer individual and group therapy, holistic healing such as yoga, nutrition, and spirituality, medication management, and PTSD treatment. By building upon your strengths and rebuilding broken bonds, we help you begin a successful life. With our staff of licensed psychotherapists and doctors, you can be assured of the highest level of care. Elite Care is the best option for long-term rehabilitation from drugs and alcohol. Contact 888-511-0607 for more information.
We're going to continue on here with, in your book, you have a chapter titled Stalkers Bag of Tricks. So I wanted to kind of touch about that a little bit, touch on approach to stalking, and then last we'll find out what to do if you're being stalked. But first, let's go back to the Stalker's Bag of Tricks. What is this? Reminds me of Felix the Cat here.
Yeah, exactly. And so each stalker, again, you have to know your stalker. I keep telling when I lecture all the time, we go through that. Know your stalker. And once you figure out what type of stalker you're going to see what techniques they use to stalk. Now, some are going to use the internet if they're good at that. I'll give you an example, too. The oldest stalker I ever worked was about 76 years old, and he had previous stalking behavior with another female.
76-year-old stalker?
76-year-old stalker.
Wow.
And what he did is he owned a mortuary. And the way he would harass the victim is she had a son that she was very close to and very proud of. So he would send pamphlets to the son, and this is subtle, pamphlets to the son about cremation. And then he sent a letter, and on one of the pamphlets he wrote a little note. He says, to her, not to him, but to her, and said, my crematorium's so good, if you ever lost your son, they'd never find him. Wow, so
that's creepy.
And this is the type of thing that we see, the little nuances that they use. Sometimes they'll go into a residence, and they go into a residence to trophy collect, gather things from the victim.
Oh, inside they break in.
Yeah, sometimes they do that. A lot of times it's for gathering information on the victim too. They go through their notes, diaries, trying to find information, or they do sick things like urinate on computers or do all types of things in the house to cause issue with the victims. But a lot of times they'll enter to try and gather more and more information on the stalker, on the victim themselves. We've had stalkers place GPS devices on cars where the victim comes up, he knows exactly where I am all the time. I never see him anyplace, but he knows exactly where I am because he texts me that he's got this information on me. Why were you there? Why were you getting your nails done here? On and on and on. And so we go out and look through the car, and sure enough, we'll find a GPS tag that you can get off the internet, and you pay X amount of dollars, and it'll show you pretty much where she is all the time on the internet. So there's all kinds of devices that they use. Now, the standard stalking thing that people think is the person comes up and they start giving you gifts, letters, candy, and then you rebuke that because you don't want to have anything to do with this individual, and then those gifts could change. You could start getting dead flowers instead of live flowers. And these are all indicators to the victim.
So he's devolving.
Right. We have had stalkers that will send music mixes to them. And these all mean something to the stalker, not necessarily to the stalking victim. But they're weird and unusual, and then she'll start hearing the music played around her house or anytime she hears these songs too, and they may be current songs, then it makes her think of the stalker. Again, it's subtle things that a lot of these people do.
Psychological manipulation.
Absolutely. There you go. And, but they also do things like take you to court and sue you for stupid things. Just like I was talking about this attorney.
Psychological manipulation.
Well, it causes them to have to go to court and get in front of a judge and try to explain what's going on, and it causes them grief and frustration and stress. We also, and what we do is we have our DAs that are handling those cases go to that trial, that courtroom, and say that we're investigating the subject for stalking, and this is a technique that we feel he's using. And so the judge works with us most of the time and says, you can bring this lawsuit at a later date. We're not going to do it until the criminal thing is taken care of. But most agencies don't have that ability because they're not working as a team environment on that. So again, you have to have the team environment concept. But I've seen stalkers do things like pour rice in victims' radiators and stuff, and the rice expands and blows the radiator, and if it goes long enough, it'll blow the engine. They use all different kinds of techniques. We could go on and on until time immemorial, but those are the stalkers' trades. I have stalkers that have been able to set up CCTV cameras in victims' houses, and then they sit not too far away on their laptops, and they watch the victim.
So they're pretty good at getting in and out of places then.
A lot of them are. Not all of them,
That's
but a lot of them are. And the victims just don't understand what's transpiring. And the other thing is they follow the victim, that's class book, and they will go contact the victim's friends, their relatives, and try and gather information on them. All this does is create stress for the victim. And in the book, we tell the victim to make sure that their significant others and the ones that aren't stalking them are aware that they're being stalked, their neighbors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so they can be on the alert for that.
That leads me to the final question. We got a few minutes left. What do we do?
Well, the first thing we always tell victims, and I get tons of stuff on my website, is contact local law enforcement. We also tell them to document everything that transpires with them. We had a sheet we'd give to victims that lays so they could easily lay out what transpired, what time, what date. It's a stalking log that we gave them. And so it's in the book, we talk about that too. So they need to document, because unfortunately, many times victims of stalking become their own advocates. So they have to do as much work as possible before they go into law enforcement. We've had them walk in with stacks of papers from other cases that have been in other states or other jurisdictions. Also, the stuff that the stalkers left. We always tell them, bring in everything the stalker's given you. We tell them to maintain everything on their computer, and if they don't think they can record it and it flashes up on their computer, then they can push print that on your screen. Now, I don't know that. I'm not really good at the Apple stuff, so they have a different thing, but it's similar. But you can do a screenshot on your PC and all that kind of good stuff to get that information. All that stuff needs to be kept and collected for law enforcement so they can do their job. And we also tell them when they go into law enforcement, they're talking to a desk officer, for example, and you're trying to explain that you're being stalked, and the desk officer looks at you and go, well, I don't see a crime yet. Well, perhaps that desk officer has been trained. So what we tell them to do is we tell them to contact the detective that's in charge of stalking in that particular jurisdiction, and then see if that detective will meet with them in regards to that. So when we brought our victims in, we photographed them, we fingerprinted them, and people go, really? I said, yeah. We photographed, we fingerprinted them because if they were kidnapped or anything else, or we wanted to run latent fingerprints against whatever we had that information. We photographed and fingerprinted their children. We took pictures of all the cars that they drive. And the reason we did that is because if you do, you put this up that a subject's been kidnapped and stuff, you see them on the, Amber Alert and that type of thing. Well, I want the original picture of that car, those mag wheels, those dents, I don't want a car that looks similar to this. I want the car that we're putting up on the news media and that type of thing. I want this picture of the woman, ups and downs, not just a shot like this, but ups and downs, any of their scars, tattoos, or anything else. The victims understand, they love us because what we're doing is we're helping them and they understand that. So we have a set protocol when we handle victims. And we tell the victim, yes, all the stuff's transpiring with you, and this guy's doing this, he's using this tool and that tool. What we need you to do is don't make contact with him.
Don't.
If he makes contact with you, you need to notify us immediately. And then if we do have if we decide to give issue a restraining order, we have our victim assistant take her through the process so she can get through it. because we're not going to harass her anymore. And the court system can be daunting. So when we get that restraining order, we just don't tell her to go get a sheriff or deputy or whoever's doing the service. We do it.
Excellent.
We confront the stalker. In essence, we stalk the stalker, and that's the way it should be.
I like that.
So they understand that there is a force out there that's trying to eliminate them. Now, is that always going to stop them? No. Restraining orders are just pieces of paper. If they don't have the backing behind them, nothing happens. Most stalkers will continue to go after their victim. And if she is what we call a Genesis victim, it's even worse for that victim. A Genesis victim is you have a victim of stalking. Say we come in and we do an intervention. That stalker leaves her and goes to another target, because often recidivism rate for stalking is very high because it's just the way their mental setup is. So they'll go stalk this other person, and then something happens there, they'll come back to this victim because there's something about this victim that causes them to want to be there all the time.
It's their first love.
I had a stalking victim that was stalked for 19 years over a period of 19 years over a period of time, and he would continually come back to her. And one of the ways he let her know he was in the area is he would go get matchbook covers or business cards from restaurants in the area and throw them on her front lawn. Again, subtle.
Did they catch him?
Yes, they caught him finally. What happened is he strapped a guy to a chair in the South. I won't tell you what state it was, but strapped him to a chair in the South and beat him to death, he and another individual. The stalker in that state that I had dealt with, because we look for the first victims so that we can use them in court to testify, contacted my stalking victim, and this was a long time ago, but we used to let them talk to each other, contacted my stalking victim. She then in turn contacted me. I contacted the police department where this homicide had transpired, and I told them, I can tell you where this suspect's going to be, about what time he's going to be there, and what location he will be at. You can imagine the other end of the phone. I'm 3,000 miles away, and I'm telling him I can do this. And he says, well, how in the world can you do that? There's no way. Do you have a crystal ball? I said, no. But we work stalkers. We stalk the stalker. We have people talk to us. We set it up so we can talk to them even after the stalker's in custody about other information. I said, right here, I have a 795-page crime report. I can tell you where he is because we profiled his behavior. We threat assessed him too. He's very violent, but we profiled his behavior. And the guy says, no way you could do that. No way you can tell me where this is. I said, okay, here's the Ontario Police Department's number. Call him. I'm going to tell you where this guy's going to be. Send a photograph to him and just wait. Well, he had to do it because there's another law enforcement agency contacting him. He just didn't believe us. And I understand that. That's fine.
Did it work?
3 days later, they're in custody, standing exactly where I told them were, in front of the library at such and such a street.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you so much for being on the show. That was great stuff.
Fun.
Really
Fun
important stuff for people to know.
Yeah, there's a lot of victims out there being stalked, and we need to do a lot more for them.
Absolutely. Here's the book again, Antidote for a Stalker, Mike Proctor. Mike, where do we get more information from you?
Well, you can go on my website, which is www.detectivemikeproctor.com. That's www.detectivemikeproctor.com. And I also, when you go on that website, you'll see that I have a blog. I got about 55 posts on that blog right now, which might help people. We're starting to do more stuff on YouTube to try and get information out to victims because it's a huge problem. It's growing exponentially. We're working with the EU right now. We're working with the United Kingdom. We're working with Australia. We're working with a variety of different countries, and they're all pushing to get their stalking law going as well. But the United States has been on top of this a little longer than most other countries. That doesn't mean we don't need to do better, because we do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Remember, our motto is simple. Wherever there's psychology involved, whether you're being stalked or not, we're going to be there. See you next time, everyone.